Hear ye, hear ye! American Players Theater and Spring Green won the 2026 Regional Tony Award. APT is a theater located in the woods about 20 miles from Madison with a 1,075-seat outdoor hill theater and a 200-seat indoor touchstone theater. The summer season is now playing through October 4th with 8 plays in a rotating repertory. This week, you can use code CITY20 for 20% off any performance in the Outdoor Hill Theater. Tickets and information at AmericanPlayers.org or by calling 608-588-2361. Need a new car? The Society of St. Vincent de Paul is hosting a car raffle fundraiser to raise money for their Madison food pantry, pharmacy, micro-lending program, and other services that help local families. That's right, you can buy tickets now for a chance to win one of 5 brand new vehicles. They've got 2026 Hondas, Nissans, and 1 Mazda. Tickets are $100 each and only 5,000 will be sold. Find more details on the cars and buy tickets at svdpmadison.org/raffle. This is CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Today, we'll be remembering Boys and Girls Club of Dane County CEO Michael Johnson. Plus, a Madison public arts nonprofit is facing scrutiny. And the public market is having its soft opening this week. There's lots of news, and let's just jump right into it. Joining me today is our friend, food and culture editor at the Cap Times, Lindsay Christians. Hello.
Hey, Bianca.
And executive producer Haley Sperling. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, B. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so we are starting with some very heavy news today with Michael Johnson, CEO of Boys and Girls Clubs of Dane County and longtime community leader. He has passed away. He was only 50, and it's a very intense thing to hold to see someone in our community who's been such a leader leave us. We certainly got surprised by this news this morning and naturally have to talk about it first on the episode because of Michael's impact. He's a very influential leader, and I've had the opportunity to work with him through the yearly event for the Wisconsin Boys and Girls Club State Youth of the Year events and gotten to see his leadership in action. And it's really tough news.
Yeah, I think that it's really an immeasurable loss, I think, for our city in terms of Michael Johnson's impact in Madison. He has been an advocate for just about every good cause you can think of here in town. And there is so much in our city that I truly believe would not exist. So much goodness in our city that would not exist without him. He has been a leader. He has brought incredible financial impact to this city. His fundraising powers are truly unmatched. Like, we are talking millions and millions of dollars every year. And on top of that, like, he still really was so true to the mission, so true to making the youth of Madison happier, better, stronger, safer. I have seen him be a spokesperson for families in needs. I have seen him rally around just about every good cause you can see. The Boys and Girls Club is constantly doing good work. Bianca, you mentioned you do work with them every year for the Youth of the Year Awards, and it's one of the most impactful events I think that, we get to see here in Wisconsin is the showcase of our youth. And they are so much better because of the Boys and Girls Club and because of the work of Michael Johnson. And it's a heavy way to start our day here, to start our week. And I think that we are going to be feeling this loss for a long time to come in Madison.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I remember just seeing how Michael and the Boys and Girls Club really stepped up during COVID to support local families. It was just incredible work. I interviewed him when Jerry Fauci passed away earlier this year, another great light in Madison. And I think that we'll feel this loss for a while.
Yeah, I got a message in this morning from the state director for Boys and Girls Clubs, Andy Gussert, and he said, Michael taught me so much about the audacity of leadership, the importance of thinking big, and to not ever let other people set limits for you. And, we had Michael on the show recently, earlier this year, and it was specifically about being a leader in Madison. And so, I recommend folks go back and listen to that. We're going to play a clip of it in a moment. But I do want to highlight one of the things he talked about, which was their effort to have a statue of former Wisconsin Secretary of State Vel Phillips on the Wisconsin Capitol grounds. That was a really big deal. And that took a lot of organizational effort and getting folks to, give their money to something that really, means so much to folks. It meant a lot to me. And I do want to now throw to a clip from our conversation with Michael. May he rest in peace, power, and know that he changed Madison for the better. Michael, you are one of Madison's highest profile nonprofit leaders. You've been the head of the Dane County Boys and Girls Club for nearly 2 decades. What does representation mean to you and how you carry yourself as a Black leader?
Yeah, I think it's speaking up on social justice issues, right? So in my almost 2 decades here, I remember when Michael Brown was killed by an officer in St. Louis, and I got called by the mayor to help there, and we raised the money to support that family. When Ahmaud Avery was killed in Brunswick, Georgia, we brought his mom on a town hall meeting in Madison with kids in Brunswick. We put her daughter through grad school. And so I always tell people that I am a Black man before I am anything else, and my wife and my kids see the things that I do. But I also believe in equity, and I believe in inclusion, and I believe that in order to be a successful nonprofit, and to be impactful, you have to work with all kinds of people. And so just like even as a Black man, it doesn't mean that in my role, I hire all people that look like me. I hire all the right people, and I make sure that the people that work on my team represent all different races and cultures, that represent and reflect the community that we live in. That's why when George Floyd was murdered and the young activists, while I didn't agree with some of the destruction that took place downtown, they pushed back because at that time I was challenging them and saying this narrative is taken away from what happened to George Floyd when we start burning down buildings and breaking into businesses. And they had a right. When I spoke out publicly, they put out a change.org and they wanted me fired. And I went down there and I met with them, and it was the young activists who told me there was no representation in our state capitol. And then that's when I called Governor Evers and said, I want to do something about that. And we did. So $800,000 later, 4 years later, we built the first statue of an African-American woman in the history of the United States at a state capitol. And that's how you show up as a Black leader. And I'm proud when I look at the people who have worked with me. I got people who are now presidents of organizations. They work in leadership roles at universities. They're running foundations. And so you train people, and then they come back, and they're now donors at Boys and Girls Clubs. And when I watch them thrive, I know that we're being impactful, because that's what leadership is about.
The reason I ended up being a part of the Wisconsin Youth of the Year competition was because I attended a fundraiser for Boys and Girls Club that I grew up at out in Baraboo. And I remember holding up my paddle and I'm like, $500, I could then do that full circle and give back to the club. And that moment meant a lot to me. It really did. And I'm sure it's so fulfilling to be able to see that from so many different people. And that Vel Phillips statue is such an homage to Black excellence and greatness. And that was a huge moment. And it was a hard fought, I'm telling you, but I'm just saying for folks listening, that was a hard fought accomplishment that took many years. And I love to hear that you went and sat down to listen to activists about where they were coming from and how they felt about that moment. And I think that we need more of that than ever. Not cutting someone off because they're doing something, but actually having those dialogues.
During that time, they were really upset with me because I had, hired these peacekeepers, and I didn't want to see young people going to jail, and especially given tearing down statues and throwing them in the river. You know what's going to come of that. And unfortunately, some people call federal cases. But there was this rumor that they were like, oh, he's sending these police officers to police us. I'm like, that's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to keep you out of trouble.
So peacekeepers, like community members that went down?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Just trying to, like, if they saw anybody doing anything wrong, if they needed water, I was paying people, I think it was like $20 an hour. And there were some people upset with me about that and had every right to be, upset. I was upset. And so I said, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to march with them. And we marched from 9 o'clock until 4 o'clock in the morning. And I stayed out there the entire time. And as I was leaving, I give them the credit. They were like, there's no representation. And so I told the governor, I said, I'll raise the money privately. I don't need a grant from anybody. I believe even white kids and white families need to see representation at our state capitol. And we got support from all over the state.
I love hearing glimpses into your journey as a leader and, noting that there are different kinds of diversity as well. You're out with a new book, The Audacity to Lead, From the Projects to the C-Suite, 7 Mindset Lessons on Love, Family, and Turning Adversity into Impact. You also represent somebody who didn't come from a place of means. I recognize that. I feel that. How do you carry all of that in your whole self?
I'm so thankful. Honestly, I'm thankful I grew up in the projects. I'm thankful that I couldn't read and couldn't write. And this may sound crazy. I'm thankful I grew up in a single family household. I'm thankful that I lived a non-productive street life. Those were all experiences that God got me through. And those experiences prepared me for today. I'm thankful that I went to the University of Minnesota. I'm thankful that, as crazy as this may sound, that when those coaches dressed up in Ku Klux Klan outfits and pretended to lynch me, that was also an experience.
Oh, my goodness. I assume, do you talk about that in your book? I didn't know about this.
Yeah, I talk about it in the book, and I talk about the lawsuit, and I talk about how, when I came home with 19 years old with a lot of money, bought a restaurant, started a record label, gave away $250,000 to family and friends, and was broke, and thought about committing suicide. I'm thankful for all those experiences because those are the same experiences that a lot of our families go through. And I'm thankful because when you lived in an environment like that, lived in a situation like that, I feel like you can't really hit there's no bottom, right? And you can only, go up. And so while that might sound weird in a way, I am thankful for all of those experiences. And in my book, I talk about love, and I talk about I'm married to a woman who is a chemist that I met at the university. And she was the one who encouraged me when I was running the streets to go back to school, or she wouldn't date me. She was the one who encouraged me to say, okay, you got to get a physical. She was the one who said, I'm going to run your credit check and get your blood work done if you want to date me. And she helped to ground me. She tutored me through my MBA program. So I talk about in this book, it's 7 strategies around, leadership, but it's all connected around love. And I just try to operate as I serve as a servant leader. It's all about giving back to others. And that's why in my role at Boys and Girls Club, I always try to do things outside of what traditional Boys and Girls Clubs do, whether it's buying people homes for Christmas or giving cars away during the holidays or giving away, a $400,000 scholarship or $100,000 scholarship. And none of that money comes through Boys and Girls Clubs. I just simply ask the goodwill of the community through social media, and people step up to be a blessing to those who were once in a situation like mine.
Literacy is the moment. Madison Reading Project's mission is to connect our community with free books and literacy resources that ignite a love for reading and affirm and reflect the diversity of young readers. And they truly put on one of the coolest events of the year, and that's happening this week. Every year, Madison Reading Project hosts a paper fashion fundraiser to support children's book access and free literacy programs called Red E to Wear. And and the creativity is unmatched. Ready to Wear is this Thursday, June 11th, from 6 to 9 p.m. at the Sylvie. This year's theme is Out of This World. Don't miss getting your tickets today at madisonreadingproject.com/readytowear2026. And gather your best mates. You get the best ticket price when you buy a 4-pack. So go get your friends together and enjoy this one-of-a-kind evening. All right, we're returning, and that was some tough news to start the podcast out with, for sure, and tough news that folks are carrying. We're just sending so much love out to everyone, and we're going to turn the conversation to talk about art, and it's also kind of some tough news for what it's worth. Some stuff going on in Madison that isn't so pretty. Lindsay, you recently published an investigation in the Cap Times outlining some serious allegations local artists have made against the Madison Public Art Project, which is an independent nonprofit that funds local public art projects in the area. Lindsay, high level, what did you find out in this investigation?
So when we started to hear at the beginning of the year about Jan the Voyager, whose full name is Jansen Reposarda, he's a Milwaukee-based artist, and he was kind of sounding the alarm that he had not gotten paid for 2 murals on Baker's Place, which are just off of East Wash, and he was owed something like $54,000 with all of the late fees that had been tacked on because he just was not getting paid. And some local news outlets did report on that, and I started looking into it a little bit because something I started to hear was that other artists had also had issues with Madison Public Art Project. And so I started pulling some emails with records requests and looking into what this nonprofit has been doing over the last 6 years or so and kind of what the reputation was among artists in Madison. And one of the things that I found is that while artists are not consistently having very good experiences with Madison Public Art Project, a lot of them are really nervous to speak up about it because there just isn't a lot of money for public art.
Yeah, it's quite comprehensive, your story. There's a lot of artists in there, that you talk to, and you start to see 1 allegation, 2 allegation, 3, 4, and it just kept going. And it is really concerning because the arts are so important to Madison, and I think everyone knows that Madison would not be the place that it is without creatives, without people trying to make our lives more beautiful and have the ability to work here. They're part of our community, and this is a really intense thing. And so you kind of shared how this issue came to your attention. Can you dig a little bit further into what artists were telling you about the financial opportunities and what that's like for folks in supporting the arts in Madison?
Yeah. So Madison Public Art Project, one of the things that's pretty good about them is that that Jillian, who is kind of the main founder, she's sort of the sole employee, she really believes that artists should be paid well. And so she has these contracts where, some artists have said that they've needed to redo their contracts to make sure that they retain their copyright. But she is sort of saying, here, this is like a pretty good amount of money that you're going to get to do this mural or this project. The issue comes when artists say there were a lot of things added on that like, not only are you doing the mural, but you're also going to be painting vases or doing a coloring book or doing these extra workshops where the deadlines were really intense. Like the expectations for how quickly designs or even the art itself would be done were just not realistic. And then you have people who are saying, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm so happy to get to make my work. I'm so glad to be paid for my work, who are also saying, I would never work with Madison Public Art Project again. The level of communication was unsustainable. The expectations were unreasonable. And it was just not a good experience. And I think that's really telling. And I think the fact that even when artists had pretty minor complaints, they're like, listen, it could have been a lot worse. I'm glad to have had the gig. The fact that artists are nervous to even come forward with minor complaints because there are so many artists and there's so little money for public art that you never want to sound like you're not easy to work with. You never want to sound like you're not grateful for the work that you do get to do. And so part of what I wanted to do in this story is just say a lot of these artists want there to be more public art. They want her to keep doing the work that she's doing. but they want the process to be better and they want to be able to be open about the ways in which it could be better.
And have you heard any response from her and response from the story so far about, okay, I'm being handed some feedback here and it's a lot of feedback. What is she said? What have you heard from folks in response to this story?
So far, I've heard from artists saying thank you. Like, this was a really fair piece. I think that part of the reason that I was interested in doing the story in the first place is that what artists were saying among themselves and what was actually going on seemed so different than the portrayal in the media. And every time you kind of sense that gap of like, someone is being held up on a pedestal or just vaunted for all of the wonderful things. Those things might be wonderful, and I don't want to discount those. It is amazing to have public art in Madison, and we're so grateful for it. But it's also, I think, important to let it have nuance and to let artists be able to say, these were my frustrations with this process. So I've mainly heard from artists. I have not heard back from Jillian herself. She did respond to some of my questions in email, and a lot of the responses were fairly canned, but that's okay. I mean, she was responding the way she felt comfortable responding. But I thought it was very telling that when I asked, I said, have artists given you feedback that this process isn't working well for them? She sent me all of these quotes that she got from surveys that she gives artists, like, how was this process for you? And there was one artist who did not want to be mentioned in the story at all because they had such a bad experience. They just wanted to forget it ever happened. They didn't want to be in the story at all, not named, nothing. And that was one of the people who was in those survey responses saying, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I thought that was really telling.
It's very Wisconsin.
Right?
People are not being honest.
And they don't feel like they can be. Yeah.
But they can be because of the money.
I was going to say this whole situation feels incredibly Midwestern in like sort of the worst ways. And you really, I feel like, did a good job laying out this really double-edged sword of the whole situation, because artists, they want the exposure, they need the exposure. That's how they grow and how they can take these higher commissioned projects. But, like I read in your story, some of them are just like, this was actually not worth the time. This was not worth the pay. And that is wild to see. And I do want to be clear that the Madison Public Art Project, this is a private nonprofit. It has nothing to do with the city of Madison itself, right?
Yes, exactly right. And that was a point of confusion almost immediately. People don't know that they're different. That like the city of Madison funds art projects, especially with percent for art, which every time there's a big project, like 1% of it goes toward art, which is very cool. We're going to see more of that as the city starts, building more and more. So we're going to be seeing more public art, which is really wonderful. But from the very beginning, because of the name, people think it's a city thing, and it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to throw in a personal experience I've had in Madison, like working with a more public-facing opportunity in the arts, where I was offered this opportunity a few years in a row, and I had feedback, and as I do, I shared it, and I shared it because I really loved the mission. I cared about, my professionalism and like my experience and what I was trying to deliver. And then later on, I heard I didn't get the call back the next year, even though, they had made it seem like you're doing so great. People even said that in their feedback, that they really loved me and my work. And I ran into the organizer. And I was just like, I was just kind of waiting for that message to see if you'd have me back, and what you guys thought of the feedback. And they're just like, oh yeah, we understand, but also just kind of seemed like maybe you didn't want to do the job. And that was absolutely opposite reality, which is actually, I want to do this job so much and I want to do it really well, and offering these points of feedback was really because I care. And that is something that I think more open dialogue about helping artists and creatives meet goals with the folks that actually have the resources, but meet them in a way that's supportive for the artist, and it's mutually supportive, and also integrating feedback versus like, oh, that was tough, didn't work out, gonna move on, because I think it was a loss. Frankly, it was a loss for everyone because I was good at it.
That is such a great example, and I think that's exactly what we're talking about here, and why artists have been hesitant to speak up about their actual experiences.
I did my duty and communicating what really didn't work so well, and they acknowledged those things, and that's on them to integrate and take that feedback. And we all live here together, so ideally we uplift the talents of our folks and don't dissuade them from living here and thinking they can't be an artist, because I think I've heard from lots of artists, Lindsay, and I'm curious if that came out in your research as well, of people questioning, like, is Madison a place where I can really find fulfilling opportunities to do this work professionally?
Yeah, I think that the real goal, my goal in the story and the artist's goals in talking to me in a lot of the cases was just, we do want this public art. We are so glad to see more of this kind of work. But in order for it to be sustainable and in order for it to feel like good professional work for our wonderful professional artists, some things need to change. And for it to be hopefully a force for improvement and a force for making things better, making these processes better, so that people do feel like, yes, I can commit to this 2-3 year long process, and I know that the contract is going to be fair, and I know that I'm going to be paid well, and I know that the communication is going to be good, and all of those things.
Well, we're going to have your story up in our show notes if folks want to read more and dive into that investigation. And we're going to turn to a good on you segment. We've got an update from the long-awaited public market, another place for public art. Before we get to that, we're going to take a quick break. All right, the public market is opening its doors to the public this week. Good on you to Madison Public Market, to everyone who's worked so hard these past few years for this moment, the people who have been holding onto this dream for decades, the new CEO, Keisha Harrison, all of the vendors, good on y'all. What's happening? The CEO announced last Friday that the market over on North First Street will, quote, be open from 3:30 to 7 p.m. each Wednesday from June 10th to July 1st. So Wednesdays are your chance to get in. This is so exciting. And it's also not just an opportunity for all of us public folks to come in and see the art and experience the food and everything that the public market is going to offer, but also for the current vendors to start vending pre-grand opening. Y'all, what's your reaction?
I'm so excited. On Wednesdays, we're going to the public market. Let's go.
Nice.
Wearing pink.
Yeah, in pink,
God.
right? Hey, I'm so stoked on this soft opening, and I feel like this is a really good move on the public market's part because, we've been talking about it. Public market. When is she opening? When is it happening? The start dates keep getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. But now it's here and they're like, hey, guys, let's open the doors. Let's get you inside. I mean, I have been fawning over the outside of it every time I drive past. I love all of the public art. Public art just makes everything so much better. The bright neon signs, it looks really cool. Obviously, there's so much back and forth and there is so much baggage attached to this project. I'm excited for it to move forward into actually existing, into being, and into us being able to use it. Lindsay, I know you have been on the public market beat for a minute.
Oh my gosh, it feels like 20 years. I did so, I will say, in the spirit of transparency, I was also a very small donor to the public market because I'm just so in support of this project. I'm so enthusiastic about it. So my name's on a donor wall for the first time in my life, which makes me feel I don't know, a mini philanthropist or something.
You did this.
I was like, oh, look, I support this place. But so I did take a tour as a donor, a month or two ago, maybe, and walked through the space, saw kind of what's up. Here's the thing. I am seeing that these pop-up events, these Wednesday night pop-up events, I can't find a list of which vendors are actually going to be there. It says maybe at least 24 vendors, but we don't know which ones yet. I have suspicions which ones. So the wine shop, there's going to be a cute little wine shop that's going to be there, a wine bar. I bet they will have some wines to serve. I bet Chocolate Shop will have some ice cream to serve. And then I bet it will be a lot of things like QB's Magnetic Creations or Ancestral Tribe Custom Apparel, where they're doing clothes, candles, jewelry, like body butter, like those kinds of things, and less maybe your full-on food vendors. So I'm going to guess that there's probably going to be less food just because when we were touring the space, there are a lot of those booths that like have hoods and then that like need to be built out for actual making food. And that's like part of what takes longer. But there's really cool, like Love You Madison and Unique Hair Accessories and More, which does like hair and body care. Some of them were already kind of like popping up a little bit in the space, even during that build out tour for donors, where like the public art is still under wraps and everything else, because they haven't revealed it yet. So I am really happy for those vendors to finally get a chance to be in front of the public too, so they can start like making some of their money, like get in front of folks and have that entrepreneurial engine starting to rev up.
Yes, I'm so excited. I'm going to go find the little Lindsay Christian's wall. That sounds fun.
I was really delighted. Like, I don't know, I don't have like money to give to things typically, but this felt really good. And I like the idea of framing the market as like a public good. Like, yes, it'll have businesses in it, but it's a public good for the city, like public transit, like parks.
I feel the same way. And I think that we need more gathering spaces. It's nice to have all the gathering spaces that are outside during the months that the majority of us go outside. I know there are hardcore winter folks, and I am included in that. But the places that year round you can come together, try all of the best of Madison. Haley, you said it, like this project has so much baggage. And I thought, Erykah Badu's bag lady, I want to go in there with my bags and leave with a bunch of stuff. I want to support Madison, support local. And it really is, there's so much thought put into who will be vendors there, and it'll be an exciting moment. And I do want to shout out before we leave this episode that I think the Madison Public Market is going to bring the best of Madison. I do have to let folks know that CityCast Madison is up for 2 Best of Madison awards with Madison Magazine this year, and we're in it to win it. And we have to let you know so you can vote for us. Will you help us become the best podcast and best news website? Vote for CityCast Madison in those 2 categories. And then you know what? Go out and vote for everyone else. There are so many. Also, like there's kind of an opportunity to learn about places you haven't learned about, honestly, because there are so many categories for, going out, best chiropractor. Like, I don't know if that is actually one, but really, truly anyone who's doing good work in Madison. And if you believe in us, again, one more time, vote for CityCast Madison in the best podcast and best news website category. And so, we'll put that link in our show notes. Voting runs through the end of the month. Help us out.
Go vote. This is the election of a decade, right? This is the election of our time. No, it's not, but it means a lot to us. So yeah, shout out to Madison Magazine for putting on Best of Madison. Bianca, I was nodding my head so hard at everything you were saying. I hit my microphone. So yeah, go get out there. I'm super stoked. I mean, we know you guys know and love us for the podcast. I'm really excited that we're up in the best news website category. If you love our newsletter, if you love what we're posting online, definitely give us a vote there. We work really, really hard on both of these things every day, and it would mean a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's Tuesday for you. Thank you guys so much. Food and culture editor at the Cap Times, Lindsay Christians.
Thank you.
And executive producer, Haley Sperling.
Thanks, Bianca.
That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm your host, Bianca Martin. You can get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to the CityCast Madison newsletter. And don't forget, you can support the show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Madison neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. And hey, if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this podcast with someone who supports local? There's a lot to support here in Madison. We love ya. Alrighty, we'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, thanks for listening. Take good care and have a wonderful day.